God's favor. God's favor is at work despite our imperfections. When we read books of the Bible, we should know the author, the audience, and the purpose. Genesis is written by Moses to Israel to share the character of God and the creation of the world. Also, it is the story of how God desires to have us set apart in Him. When we read the biblical narratives, we should ask ourselves, who are they? What can they represent? How is this relevant to me now? Dr. Darius Daniels questions. We should insert ourselves into the narratives. This is the place of a change in our belief system. And Abram said, "You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir." Then the word of the Lord came to him. "This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir." He took him outside and said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them." Then he said to him, "So shall your offspring be." Genesis chapter 15, verse 3 through 5, NIV. God has come to Abram in a vision. It is a vision of his future. Abram will have descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. Abram is 75 years old when God first gives him this vision. He is past childbearing years and his wife is barren. There is nothing about his life that supports this vision. This is our story too. It doesn't have to be a vision. It can be a thought, a dream, or a goal given from God. And there is nothing about our current situation that supports it. This is the character of God on display. He gives us prompting that we have to grow into. Pastor Daniels calls this God's preferred future for us. It requires our commitment to it. It requires a relationship with God to get there. Do we trust God with our future when there is nothing about our current circumstances that support what we believe? Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go, sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Abram agreed to do what Sarai said. Genesis chapter 16, verse 1 and 2, NIV. Sarai hears God's promise, and instead of allowing God to unfold the vision, she builds the promise herself. She gives Hagar to Abram to marry and have an heir through. This is our story too. We have this vision from God, and instead of trusting God to see it through, we try to build it ourselves. "I will make the son of a slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring." Genesis chapter 21, verse 13, NIV. Hagar and her son are blessed. Even though it isn't the promise of God, he still is blessed too. God knows our hearts. He knows when we will mess up. He blesses us anyway. His grace is sufficient. He works through our imperfections too. "Where is your wife Sarah?" they asked him. "They're in the tent," he said. Then one of them said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Now Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. Genesis chapter 18, verse 9 through 11, NIV. The story of God's grace is He works with us and through our imperfections. Sarai created a way for Ishmael, but that doesn't stop her from receiving the promise of Isaac. God's grace works through our imperfections. We are blessed anyway. Sarai wasn't ready to steward and grow Isaac, but Sarah is. God's preferred future for us requires us to stretch It requires us to have courage and to grow and mature into his vision for our lives. We have to grow from Sarai into Sarah. We have to grow from I'll do it myself into let me grow into who I need to become, and God will do it when I am ready. This requires submission, obedience, and trust. God's preferred future requires a relationship with him. This relationship is our own to nurture and grow. This relationship with him is built outside of church. We need God at church and at home. We need God in our daily lives. We bring him into our daily lives by praying daily, reading our Bible daily to learn the character of God and for transformation in our beliefs about ourselves and others. We add worship and fasting when prompted to grow in love, connection, and intimacy with God. We do all these things, and God will strengthen every single area of our lives. We will be strengthened physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially. Is there anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Genesis chapter 18, verse 14, NIV. Sarah is nearly 90 years old, and Abraham is almost 99. This is happening to Sarah, even she doesn't believe it. God made the universe, the sun. The one sun lights and warms the entire world. 8 billion people receive light from this one source. Can the God that made the sun make a woman in her 90s have a kid? Yes. Can he give us what he wants for us, and there is literally no fruit of its existence in our current circumstances? Yes. We have to partner with God to make it happen. Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age. At the very time God had promised him, Abraham gave him the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore him. Genesis chapter 21, verse 1 through 3, NIV. Sarai works and becomes Sarah, and now she is ready to grow and steward the gift and purpose Isaac. God's grace is his favor and love to help us become who he wants us to be so that we are ready to steward his preferred future for us. He works through us and through our imperfections to birth our Isaac. We are to follow God's example and give ourselves grace and love because that's what gives us the courage to begin to make different choices. The choices that align us with his preferred future and purpose. It's love that produces change. God's love, self-love.